I started my journey as an ETL test engineer. Regarding the big data, I have a very limited exposure. It was only 10%. I wanted to transition towards a big data part, but the problem that I found out was that there were hundreds of syllabus, right, to become a big data engineer or to become a data engineer, cloud engineer, whatsoever. But I came up with one of the video, right, of Trendy Tech of Sumit sir, where he was mentioning about certain big data thing and all those stuff. So I really liked his video and the way that how he's explaining those concepts, and it was giving me a clarity of thought, okay, what is big data basically and why and how it is able to solve the problem. I watched around his SQL videos, right, that is there on YouTube, right, for free I believe, and I was clear that okay, if I want to transition, right, and if I want to have a mentor or a guidance, right, I would be having it from this course or from this team itself, because the clarity of thoughts, the quality content and his style of teaching was very good. I have given around 10 interviews. What all interviews I have given, I have to face around 5 rounds on an average. For me, what happened was that in all of the interviews, I believe, we have a conversation, right, and then he shared a Google Doc where we have to solve the problem live then and there itself.
Hey folks, welcome to Trendy Tech. This is Mansa Nagraj, and here I am with an awe-inspiring journey of a dynamic data engineer, Siddharth. Coming from a non-tech background to working in top tech companies like Accenture, F5, Dun&B, and now as a senior data engineer at Analyst, here is a sneak peek of a super achiever's story for you. Well, hi Siddharth, a very warm welcome. Really pleased to have you over to share your experiences as a data engineer. This will surely help a lot of our viewers aspiring to be successful in their career, just like you have been. Well, having said that, I would request you to give a brief walkthrough into your professional journey.
Yes, so hello, my name is Siddharth. So I am a civil engineer by education, but a software engineer by profession. So I started my career as an ETL test engineer with Accenture, and then I gradually moved into the big data part. So when I was working as an ETL test engineer, so over there I got exposed to one of the tool called as Snowflake that also supports distributed computing and all those stuffs. So I developed an interest towards the big data side, and then eventually as part of one of my project in one of the companies that I've been working with, I was working not, I could say, directly with big data, but there was some crux or some part of it when I was working, right. So over there, I just got an exposure, high-level exposure, not much to it, and then I thought of moving into the big data side, right? Yeah, that's how the journey began.
That's an excellent transition, definitely. So, as you mentioned, you are from a non-tech background. How did you develop this interest towards coding? And if I could ask, like, what are the different resources that help you in gaining the needed expertise for a software domain?
Good. So yeah, since you have correctly mentioned that I am from a non-tech background, right, and that is civil engineering. So for me, right, transitioning into the computer science or the tech part or the technology part was, I will not say that it's easy, but yeah, it was okay. I won't say it was difficult too, because one of the things that I have followed and that I encourage people to do as well is not to master everything at once. So what I meant to say is that whenever I thought, okay, I have to work on this particular project or this particular project intrigues me, right? So instead of getting overwhelmed with all the coding part and all the complexities around that project, what I tried to do was I tried to learn stuffs on the go itself, right? I just tried to see, okay, what all stuffs I need to learn, and then I try to incorporate them and learn one by one. It's not like that at first I have to master and then only I can build a project and all those stuffs. So that was one part of it, and because of this, I got interest in developing one of our college app, right? So I made my hands dirty over there, right? I got some exposure and I helped the team, right, in building our college app. And due to this, I got into the computer science thing, because eventually from the school life itself, I like computer, right? Because there was in 11th or 12th, right, we have this thing that, okay, we have to choose some optional subjects, right? And for me, one of my optional subject was computer science itself. And over there, I built an HTML projects, right, to get good grades in class 12th and all those stuff. So from that point itself, I have that thing, okay, that I am interested towards computer science, but during these college days and all those stuffs in the initial phase, I was not focusing much towards it, but once I get an exposure or got an opportunity to work on the smaller project, I developed my interest towards it.
Excellent. I mean, like you were keen towards software right from your schooling days as well. And also a very good approach as to on the go, you start learning things which are important. And, like step by step, you take everything slowly so that you can gain confidence and work towards being the best in that domain. Nice, Siddharth. So my next question would be on what was the role that you started off your journey into the software industry as? Like, what was that particular role? I think you started off with Accenture, right?
Yes. So the role with which I started my journey with was ETL test engineer. Sorry. So it was towards the testing part. So I was working for a project that deals with data, but the data was a monolithic system, right? It was on-prem itself. There was no cloud involved in all those systems. So we were dealing with one of our client, right, called as Subway. So I was working for them, and they have a system. They have a simple thing, right, that they have some data placed at some place, right, on-prem, and they have to bring those data in via building certain pipelines, and then they have to store it somewhere so that it can be later used for the analysis purpose and all those stuff. So that was basically the crux of the project. So I started my journey as an ETL test engineer. So my entire work, right, was once we get the data, I have to do certain sorts of data quality checks, right, onto that data and ensure that the data that we are getting is meeting the criteria or not as per the business requirement or as per the quality standards that we have, the quality standards that has been told to us. So I was working mostly towards the quality part of the data itself.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting task and the project to work on. Well, how did this expertise in ETL help you in your career switch as a data engineer, if I could ask that?
Cool. So since I mentioned that I started my career as an ETL test engineer, so while dealing with the quality of the data, right? So if you are working towards the quality part, so it's not like that you should not have any knowledge about the data itself, right? And about how the data is coming, what all transformations are being applied. Because if you're working as a quality engineer, then you have to know, okay, what all transformations is being applied, from where the data is coming. So you need to know about all those intricate details that I wanted to tell about. So because of that, I got to work with developers, right? I used to sit with them. I used to get an understanding, okay, what is the entire pipeline, how we are getting the data, what we are doing with those, what are the kind of transformations that we are happening. Because this is also helping me to get an understanding about the entire data and the entire pipeline so that I can better test it, right? And plus, since I introduced this concept that if I would be sitting with the ETL developers, right, and would be understanding about the entire pipeline, so then and there itself, I can also find out some bugs, right, so that it can also help the business, right, in order to fix it then and there rather than taking it at the later stage and doing it. So this was one of the mindset behind it, and plus the learning mindset was also there. So that's how I developed an interest, or you can say an expertise towards the ETL part.
Excellent. That's a nice approach to learn things from a holistic point of view, how things work out so that you can do your tasks better. That was really nice, Siddharth. As you were aware of big data at a higher level while in your ETL phase, right? So did you see the need to upskill yourself with the latest technologies in big data? And if so, what were the different resources that helped you in this upskilling phase?
Yes. So as you mentioned, right, that I have been into the ETL part, right? But regarding the big data, I have a very limited exposure because I tend to work on a project where I got an exposure towards the big data. But what I could say is it was only 10%, right? You can say 10 to 15%, not much than that. Okay. So since I wanted to transition towards the big data part, because while working with those people, right, I developed an interest, and since I mentioned, right, that I have been more towards the ETL part, right, how pipeline works, how distributed computing works and all those stuff. So I wanted to learn it, right, and then, right, as everyone do, that they go to the internet and they do search around some syllabus or the topic that they need to follow, right. So I also did the same. I was no different. So, but the problem that I found out was that there were hundred of syllabus, right? People were giving you hundred of roadmaps to become a big data engineer or to become a data engineer, cloud engineer, whatsoever. And plus for that, for one single topic, there are hundred of videos to follow. So what I observed was, what I end up doing is that I end up wasting time in the stuff where, what I end up basically wasting time at the point where I have been only looking up for the courses and the syllabus itself. I was not using or utilizing that time towards the preparation part, but it was more towards just searching for the best roadmap to follow and all those stuff. So this was one of the problem that I faced during my transition.
So eventually, like, how did you kind of prepare yourself with the knowledge that is required to fill that knowledge gap to become a data engineer? What was that, resource that you definitely felt was useful for you?
Okay, so over here, as I was just browsing the internet and all those stuffs, right, the usual day, and I came up with one of the video, right, of Trendy Tech of Sumit sir, where he was mentioning about certain big data thing and all those stuff. So it was a video where he was just discussing about the intricate details around the big data stuff, right, what is big data and all those stuff. So I really like his video and the way that how he's explaining those concepts, and it was giving me a clarity of thought, okay, what is big data basically, and why and how it is able to solve the problem, right? So all that stuff was happening. And then I watched around his SQL videos, right, that is there on YouTube, right, for free, I believe. So I watched those videos, right, and I was clear that, okay, if I want to transition, right, and if I want to have a mentor or a guidance, right, I would be having it from this course or from this team itself, because the clarity of thoughts, the quality content, and his style of teaching was very good, right. Apart from this, I also used to read some articles, right, around big data space, whether it be on Medium or some other stuff. So that's also one of the part that I did.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really nice way of learning things also, referring to several other articles. And the course, as you mentioned, it's a very structured approach that you kind of found it really helpful for your upskilling. So yeah, moving ahead, this is a really important thing from the viewer's perspective as well. What is a generic interview process like for a data engineer's role?
Okay, good. So the interview process, I would say, comprise of around 4 or 5 rounds. Like for me, what all interviews I have given, I have to face around 5 rounds on an average, right? So when I talk about the round itself, so the first round was towards the Python part, right? So when I talk about Python, for me, what happened was that in all of the interviews, I believe, we have a conversation, right? And then he shared a Google Doc where we have to solve the problem live then and there itself. So we were doing a screen share and then solving the problem and all those stuff. So there was around 2 Python questions that needs to be solved. So, and then once you clear that particular round, then you move to the second round. That round basically deals with the SQL. Okay. So when I talk about SQL, so it would be mostly towards the practical part of it, not the theoretical. So again, over there I have been given 5 questions, right, of SQL, and I have to solve it then and there after sharing my screen. So everything was happening live, right? So once you start solving the problem as well, the interviewer might ask, okay, why are you using this approach and all those stuff. So it was a conversation that is being going on between us, and plus the solution part of it. So we were discussing the solution and the approach as well. So that part was there. And then the third round, I would say it was towards the big data concept, right? So first they would start it by asking about the projects that you have done and what was your role in your previous company. And then regarding that project itself, they would be asking certain questions, okay? And then post that, then they would be asking about the big data concepts basically, right? And mostly it would be Hadoop, Hive, and then Spark would come into picture. Obviously Spark would be there. And what I felt was that Spark would take up your 70% of the big data interview, because people would be mostly focusing on Spark. Okay. And then the next round for me was the Spark coding question. So when I talk about the Spark coding question itself, so over there they would be asking generic Spark questions, right? The theoretical part, and then they would be giving you certain questions, and they will tell you to write the solution of it using Spark. So it depends whether you want to use PySpark or a Scala. You can just ask the interviewer, and you can choose the language of yours, and then you can do it. And then the last round was managerial round, right? Again, it depends. It could be a semi-technical round as well, and it could be a pure technical round. It again depends upon the company. For some of the companies that I've given, it was a semi-technical where it was tech plus HR questions. And for some of the companies, it was purely technical. And then once you clear it, it would be mystery. In the HR would be calling you and would be telling you, open, we have cleared the round and all this stuff.
Great, yeah. That was a great insight into the interview process. And I suppose you would have given multiple interviews, and this would be the generic number of rounds, and overall it would be the same across all the companies.
I have given around 10 interviews, right? Other were also scheduled, but yeah, I have given 10 interviews, yeah. So depending upon those 10 interviews, on an average, this was the entire interview scheduling, you can say.
Okay. Nice. So moving on, well, I would like to know what a typical workday for a data engineer in Analyst look like.
So obviously, since in Analyst, right? So in Analyst, the project that I am currently working with is their in-house project. So I'm working for their own product, right? So for me, the day starts with the first of all, the checking your mails, right? What all mails you got, and checking around the requirement and all those stuff. And we follow the Scrum methodology, right? So over there we have our everything scheduled or everything planned, right, for the entire week or so. And then we start acting upon it. So the day starts with checking the mails and then looking at the stuffs, okay, what needs to be done. Then the second part of it would be collaborating with people, because in Analyst, right, since I'm working with their own product. So what end up happening is that we are working on certain open source tool as well, right? We are just incorporating certain open source tool in our project as well. So we have this one session where we collaborate with different data engineers, and we do brainstorming about those stuffs, right? Okay, if we want to develop this pipeline, then this open source tools will help us. So we tend to do brainstorm, okay, what needs to be done, how it needs to be incorporated, and all those stuff. So one brainstorming session would be there. Then the third would be obviously the meeting site. So whatever work that you do, right, you end up explaining those works. And then if you are facing any issue, you end up following up in that meeting, and you end up just solving it. So yeah, and obviously the work will be there, right? So you have to do coding. But yeah, what I could say is that apart from the normal work, right, requirement gathering, brainstorming, meetings, so these are the stuff that happens on a high level, right?
Great, yeah, nice. Well, that was a very good overview of what exactly a data engineer's tasks would look like. Thank you so much for that. And lastly, I would like to know, I mean, if you could share some tips to our viewers from your experience to be a successful, data engineer, right? I mean, in this age today.
Cool. So first of all, I would like to say that everything is possible. Okay, whether you are from a tech background or you are working on a tech but on a entire different tech stack, right? Then also it's possible. Or if you are from a non-tech background, then also it's possible, okay? So as I mentioned, that what people end up doing, or what people tend to do, is that they tend to get overwhelmed with lot of stuffs, right? And they tend to see, okay, that if I have to start working on data engineering, or if I want to transition into data engineering, then I have to they just go for the roadmap, and they see, okay, I have to learn all these stuffs. So they get overwhelmed with all the stuffs. And they end up leaving it, or they end up saying that, okay, that this is not my cup of tea and all those stuff. So what I wanted to say to those people is that just try to first clear your basics, because basics are those stuffs that is the building block, and that will help you in serving long, right, in this particular industry, right? And don't don't get overwhelmed with the new tech that is coming. For example, some people tend to say that, okay, DBT is there, Databricks is there and all those stuffs. But what people end up ignoring is that, yeah, those are the new tools, but they if we talk about the Databrick itself, right, that is a new tool, but the entire concept or the base around it circulates or revolves around this Spark itself. So it's just a UI that we have to just write our Spark code in that particular UI rather than writing it on a IDE or something. So, but people end up just thinking, okay, I have to learn Databricks as well. It would be difficult. I have to learn so many things. So please don't go into that sort of into that loop, right? And try to learn things on go. So as I already mentioned, right, that don't try to master everything at once. Okay, if you are learning something, for example, if I'm learning SQL for the first time or big data for the first time, don't think that, okay, I would be mastering everything at once and then only I would start giving interviews and all those stuff. No, try to just take an idea, right, and make your base strong around it, and then try to give interviews so that you can also get experience around it. Okay, what is the current industry trend and what is happening, and then eventually on the job itself you tend to master it. For example, if I take my story, right, I was not having any knowledge in cloud, right, particularly on AWS, and in Trendy Tech, sir teaches cloud, right, particularly AWS. But it is in week 14 or 15, I believe. So since I completed up till week 13, and then I started giving interviews and all this stuff, so I have to skip that particular part, right, for some period of time. But when I was giving interviews, I told them that I don't have much exposure around cloud, okay, and the current project that I'm working with is in AWS itself. So within that entire 15 or 20 days, I believe I learned 30% of the cloud stuffs, right? So on the go itself, since I was practicing and I was working on it, so I started learning about those concepts on the go, and that really helped me. If I would have sat and learned the cloud, right, for around a week or so, then I would have got certain knowledge, but that knowledge would be again just putting everything in your head and not learning about the basic stuffs. Okay, how the cloud works and all this stuff. But since I got a practical demo, so I tend to do it better. So that's one of the examples that I wanted to give, is that learn everything on the go. Don't try to master yourself, and then don't get overwhelmed with the new concepts or the new tech that is coming in the market, because it's an IT industry and the new tech would be coming, right? So it's an endless loop, right? And so just stick to your basic. Okay, stick to your basics. Yeah, everything is possible. Just go with this mindset that everything is possible. You just have to plan it, and then once you have a good plan, right, you can achieve anything. And if I can do it, right, coming from a non-tech background and then just starting my career with a testing part, right, which is good, but not into the development part, I try to transition into it. But since I have done it, so you can also do it. So that's it, yeah. That's the motivation that I wanted to give.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words. Definitely, I agree on whatever you just gave advice on as per your experience. Totally agree on that. Thank you so much for all those valuable information, and wishing you lots of success in your future endeavor as well. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Mansa.
Thank you.